protesters shifted to the right of the fence, and what happened that the Israeli forces started firing tear gas. A lot of tear gas was fired on these protesters, so the protesters came back here, and at least 3,000 Palestinian protesters are very close to the fence. At least 40 Palestinian protesters have been injured so far. Palestinian youth protesters said that they won't go home today without breaking the fence. So we have been seeing a lot of attempts to break the fence, and the Israelis fired a lot of tear gas to try to disperse all these protesters. Tensions are escalating. A lot of tear gas since the morning, a lot of live ammunition, and there was a Palestinian child who was injured in his head. Protesters have been flying kites with the Palestinian flags, and we saw the Israeli soldiers targeting these flags with live ammunition. We were talking to some people of the committee of organizing the 14th and the 15th. They said that there will be thousands and thousands of kites with Palestinian flags, and what is obvious that the Palestinians are serious about what's going to happen on the 14th and the 15th. Today is just the last Friday of the Great March of Return, but the 14th and the 15th are expected to be a very tough days.
That was local journalist Hind Kadari. Well, as she said, Palestinians have also recently started to resort to a new form of violent protest, attaching firebombs to kites and then flying them over the border fence into Israeli-held territory. The Israeli Defence Forces stated that they will continue to operate against the protests, which they call a terrorist act inspired by Hamas. And as the US readies to move its embassy to Jerusalem on Monday, the protests are likely to intensify. The UN is now warning of potential escalation.
I'm particularly worried about today and the coming days. With the US Embassy move to Jerusalem on Monday and with the planned protests in Gaza, and take this opportunity again to call on Israel to be very careful and calibrated in how it uses force in addressing the protesters in Gaza, but also call on Hamas and the leaders of the protests in Gaza to prevent friction and to prevent situations in which provocations can happen.
Well, the diplomatic switch to Jerusalem was first announced last year, sparking deadly protests in Palestine as well as condemnation across the globe. The city has long been a point of contention. It's regarded as a holy site in several religions. However, Israel claims it as its capital.
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Allah'ın rızasını kazanmasına